What if the most dangerous financial lie you've ever been told is the phrase, renting is throwing money away? You are sitting there in that coffee shop, staring at Zillow, trying to force the math to make sense. You're looking at interest rates hovering near 7% and a monthly payment that eats half your paycheck, and your gut is screaming that it's a trap. Well, listen to your gut, because at these rates, you aren't buying an asset. You are signing up to write a massive 30-year charity check to the banking cartel. I'm King, and I am a financial architect. I don't build wealth on the fairy tales your realtor tells you to get a commission. I build it on the cold, hard reality of the numbers. Today, I am going to prove to you why the American dream of homeownership has mathematically mutated into the American nightmare, and why renting might actually be the smartest strategic move you can make in 2026. If you want to stop being a victim of the system and start playing the game like the wealthy do, hit that subscribe and like button right now. Your future self will thank you for choosing truth over tradition. Let's get into the meat of this, and I want you to pay very close attention because the banking industry spends billions of dollars to make sure you don't understand what I'm about to tell you. We need to talk about the meat of the problem, the amortization schedule. Most people look at a $500,000 home and think, okay, I'll put 20% down, that's $100,000, and I'll pay off the remaining $400,000 over 30 years. They see the monthly payment of roughly $2,700 for principal and interest and think, I can afford that. But they don't look at where that money is actually going. Even at a 6 or 7% interest rate in the very first month of your mortgage, out of that $2,700 payment, about $2,300 is going straight to interest. Only about $400 is actually touching the principal of your loan. Let that sink in for a second. You are working 40, 50, 60 hours a week to give the bank $2,300 in profit while you only own an extra $400 of your house. For the first 10 to 15 years of a 30-year mortgage at 7%, you are effectively just renting the money from the bank. You aren't building equity, you are paying for the privilege of debt. But it gets worse. People always say, but King, home prices always go up. Sure, over a 30-year horizon, real estate generally appreciates, but let's look at the phantom costs that nobody talks about. These are the unrecoverable costs that never come back to you. When you rent, your rent is the ceiling of what you will pay each month. When you buy, your mortgage is the floor. On top of that, $2,700, you have property taxes. In a place like Texas or New Jersey, you could easily be paying $10,000 to $15,000 a year just in taxes. That's $1,200 a month gone. Poof. Forever. Then you have homeowners insurance, which is skyrocketing across the country due to climate risks. Then you have the maintenance. The rule of thumb is 1% of the home's value per year. On a $500,000 house, that is $5,000 a year for things like a leaky roof, a broken HVAC, or a water heater that decides to explode on Christmas Eve. When you add up the interest, the taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance, you are looking at nearly $4,000 a month in sunk costs that provide zero return on investment. If you could rent a similar house for $2,800 a month, you are literally losing $1,200 every single month by owning it. You have to ask yourself, is the pride of ownership worth $14,000 a year in lost capital? Mathematically, the answer is often a resounding no. Think about the opportunity cost. If you take that $100,000 down payment and that $1,200 monthly difference, and you put it into a boring S&P 500 index fund that historically returns 10% annually, do you know what happens? In 30 years, while your neighbor is finally celebrating owning a 30-year-old house that needs a new roof and windows, you are sitting on a multi-million-dollar liquid portfolio. Real estate agents love to scream about leverage controlling a big asset with a small down payment. But here is the truth, leverage cuts both ways. When your interest rate is higher than the appreciation rate, you aren't leveraging profit, you are magnifying your losses. You could buy 5 of his houses in cash. The bank wants you to believe that equity is the goal, but equity is trapped wealth. You can't eat your kitchen cabinets, you can't pay for a medical emergency with your backyard. Real wealth is liquidity and cash flow, and the current housing market is designed to strip you of both. We are seeing a massive transfer of wealth from the middle class to the financial institutions through these high-interest mortgages. If you buy right now, you aren't an investor, you are a customer. And in the world of finance, if you don't know who the sucker at the table is, it's you. I want to tell you a story about a guy named Alex. Alex is 32 years old. He works in tech in Seattle, and he makes about $130,000 a year. By all objective measures, Alex is crushing it. But Alex feels like a total failure. Why? Because every time he scrolls through Instagram, he sees his high school friends posting photos in front of their new sold signs. He sees the granite countertops, the subway tile backsplashes, and the smiling couples holding up a giant brass key. At the annual Thanksgiving dinner, his parents, who bought their first home in 1985 for 3 times their annual salary, constantly badger him. Alex, when are you going to stop throwing money away on that apartment? You need to build roots. You need an asset. This pressure is a heavy, invisible weight that Alex carries every day. It leads to what I call the 3 a.m. ceiling stare. It's that moment when Alex is lying in bed, the blue light of his phone reflecting off his tired eyes as he looks at a mortgage calculator for the 100th time. He feels this frantic, desperate need to get in before he's priced out forever. He's terrified that if he doesn't buy now, he will be a perpetual renter, a second-class citizen in the American economy. This isn't just a financial decision for Alex, it's an existential crisis. He's considering draining his entire 401k and every penny of his emergency fund just to scrape together a down payment for a house he doesn't even really like. He's willing to become house rich and cash poor. He's willing to sacrifice his ability to travel, his ability to take risks in his career, and his peace of mind, all for the sake of social validation. But imagine the reality of Alex's life 6 months after buying that house. The new home smell has faded. The excitement of the move is gone. Now, he's sitting in a half-empty living room because he can't afford furniture. He's stressed because his property tax assessment just came back 20% higher than expected. He's lonely because he moved 45 minutes away from his friends just to find something in his price range. He's trapped. He can't quit his high-stress job because he is 3 weeks away from insolvency if a paycheck doesn't hit. This is the golden handcuffs of the suburban dream. We have been conditioned to believe that a 30-year debt obligation is security, but for Alex, it is a prison. He has traded his freedom for a mortgage. He has traded his mobility for a zip code. The tragedy is that the advice Alex is getting is from a different era. His parents aren't trying to hurt him, but they are speaking a language that no longer exists. In the 80s and 90s, the ratio of home prices to median income was manageable. Today, it is astronomical. We are living through a period where the cost of shelter has been decoupled from the reality of wages. Alex is trying to play a game where the rules were changed while he was sleeping. He feels the anxiety of the missing out culture, the FOMO that drives people to make the worst financial decisions of their lives. We need to stop equating homeownership with adulthood. You are not a failure because you have a lease. You are a genius if you recognize that your capital is better served elsewhere. Real security doesn't come from a deed to a piece of dirt. It comes from having the financial margin to say no to things that drain your soul. Alex doesn't need a house. He needs permission to live his own life, not the one scripted for him by a realtor's marketing brochure. So, how do we actually win? If the game is rigged, you don't play by their rules. You create your own. I want to introduce you to a framework that will give you absolute clarity. It's called the 5% rule, popularized by financial researcher Ben Felix, and it's the ultimate BS detector for the real estate market. To find the break-even point between renting and buying, you take the value of the home and multiply it by 5%. Why 5? Because 1% goes to maintenance, 1% goes to property taxes, and roughly 3% represents the cost of capital, the interest you pay, or the investment returns you give up by having your money tied up in a house. Take that total and divide it by 12. If you can rent a similar home for less than that number, you should rent and invest the difference. It is that simple. This isn't an opinion, it's math. It removes the emotion and the social pressure and gives you a hard line in the sand. Even using this conservative 5% rule in a world where mortgage rates are actually 7%, renting often wins. Imagine if we used the real cost of capital, buying would look even worse. If you decide that renting is the smarter move for your current situation, you must be disciplined. You cannot spend the money you saved by not having a mortgage on depreciating assets like cars or clothes. You must build what I call the Freedom Fund. This is your F square. You take the down payment you would have used and the monthly savings, and you put them into a diversified portfolio of low-cost index funds. Think VOO, Vanguard S&P 500, or VTI, Vanguard Total Stock Market. Over the long term, the stock market has historically outperformed residential real estate. By doing this, you aren't throwing money away on rent. You are buying your time back. You are building a liquid net worth that gives you the power to move for a better job, start a business, or retire a decade earlier than your peers who are tied to a 30-year amortization schedule. Now, if you absolutely must buy a house, maybe you have a large family or you truly value the stability of a specific school district, you need to be a shark in your negotiations. Do not just accept the 7% rate. Look into a seller buy down. This is a tactic where you ask the seller to contribute a portion of the closing costs to buy down your interest rate for the first few years. It can drop your rate from 7% to 5% or even 4%, saving you thousands of dollars in those critical early years of the loan. Also consider house hacking. If you buy a property, make sure it has the potential to generate income. Can you rent out the basement? Can you build an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, in the back? If someone else is paying your interest, the math changes completely. You want to turn your primary residence from a liability into an asset as quickly as possible. Another crucial strategy is the 10-year rule. Never buy a home unless you are 100% certain you will live there for at least a decade. And why? Because the transaction costs of real estate are brutal. Between the 6% realtor commission when you sell, the 2 to 3% in closing costs when you buy, and the moving expenses, you start off roughly 10% in the hole the day you get the keys. If the market stays flat for 3 years and you have to move for work, you will lose tens of thousands of dollars. Renting provides you with an option on your life, but allows you to be nimble. In a rapidly changing economy where AI and remote work are shifting the landscape of where the best jobs are, mobility is the ultimate competitive advantage. Don't anchor yourself to a sinking ship just because society told you it was a life raft. Finally, you need to understand the sequence of returns risk. If you put all your money into a house and the local market dips right when you need to sell, you are stuck. But if you have a liquid portfolio, you can draw from it strategically. You are in control. The goal of personal finance isn't to own a specific type of asset. The goal is to have the highest number of choices available to you at any given moment. When you choose to rent and invest, you are choosing a path of maximum optionality. You are choosing to be the architect of your life rather than a tenant of the bank's expectations. Take the time to build your own spreadsheet, run your own numbers. Don't let a mortgage professional who gets paid a commission tell you what you can afford. Only you know the price of your peace. At the end of the day, we have to acknowledge one fundamental truth. Personal finance is personal. There is no one-size-fits-all answer that applies to every person in every city, but there is a correct way to think about the problem. You have to separate your housing, which is an expense, from your investing, which is for wealth creation. The danger happens when we confuse the two. When we buy a home that is too expensive because we tell ourselves it's a good investment, we are lying to ourselves. We are using logic to justify an emotional desire. And look, I get it. I've been there. I've felt that pull of wanting a place to truly call my own. A place where I can paint the walls whatever color I want and plant a lemon tree in the backyard. But I also know the feeling of having a bank account that gives me the freedom to walk away from any situation that doesn't serve me. And I can tell you from experience, the lemon tree isn't as sweet as the freedom. I want you to take a long, hard look at your life and ask yourself, am I designing my life for my own happiness, or am I designing it to fit a mold that was created 40 years ago? The world has changed, the math has changed, and your strategy needs to change with it. If you are renting right now, hold your head high. You aren't behind. You are potentially in a much stronger position to build generational wealth than the person who just signed a $600,000 mortgage at 7.5%. You have the liquidity, you have the mobility, you have the power. Don't let the noise of the world drown out the signal of the math. I'm King, and I've spent my career analyzing these structures so that you don't have to learn the hard way. My goal is to see you win, not the banks. I want to hear from you in the comments. If you've run the numbers and you've realized that renting is your path to victory, type math below. If you still believe that homeownership is the right move for you despite the costs, type home and tell me why. I want to have this debate. I want to see your perspectives because that is how we all get smarter. And if you found even one piece of value in this deep dive, please share this video with one friend who is currently stressing out over a Zillow listing. You might just save them from a 30-year mistake. Don't forget to check the link in the description for my 5% rule spreadsheet so you can run your own numbers with total confidence. Thank you for spending this time with me. Stay sharp, stay liquid, and I will see you in the next one. This is your life, design it well.